Elena Caruso thought she was just saving a lost child from the rain, until the little girl hummed back a lullaby that made the most dangerous man in Brooklyn stop breathing. One song whispered by trembling lips would drag a struggling waitress into a world where every act of kindness carries a death sentence, and where the monster who owns the city's shadows is about to discover that love might be the only thing more terrifying than his enemies. She had no idea that protecting one scared child would make her the target of a war she never asked to join, or that the man hunting them both would become the only thing standing between her family and destruction. When the Mafia boss whispered, "Who taught you that song?" Elena's quiet life shattered like glass, and what rose from the pieces would either save them all or destroy everything she'd fought to protect. Subscribe and tell me where you're watching from, because this story is about to prove that sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is show mercy to the wrong person. The alarm clock screamed at 5 in the morning. Elena Caruso rolled over and hit the snooze button harder than she needed to. Her small bedroom was still dark. Rain tapped against the window like tiny fingers asking to come inside. She rubbed her eyes and sat up. Her back ached from the cheap mattress. Bills were scattered across her nightstand like fallen leaves. Each one had angry red letters that said "past due" or "final notice." Elena pushed her long brown hair out of her face and walked to the next room. Nico lay curled up in his twin bed. Her 8-year-old brother looked so small under the worn blankets. His breathing was a little wheezy. It always was. "Hey, sleepyhead," she whispered, gently shaking his shoulder. "Time to wake up." Nico opened his big brown eyes. They were the same color as hers, the same color as their mother's had been. "I don't feel good," he said. His voice was rough and scratchy. Elena's heart clenched. She pressed her hand to his forehead, a little warm, but not too bad. She grabbed his inhaler from the bedside table and helped him sit up. "2 puffs," she said softly, "nice and slow." Nico did as she said. The medicine made a soft, hissing sound. After a minute, his breathing got easier. "Better?" Elena asked. He nodded and gave her a small smile. That smile made everything worth it. Every long shift at the diner, every sleepless night worrying about money, every time she went to bed hungry so he could have seconds. "I'm going to work," she said, kissing his forehead. "Mrs. Chen will check on you before school. Remember to take your inhaler if you need it." "I know," Nico said. He was a smart kid. Too smart for his own good sometimes. "Elena?" "Yeah?" "Are we going to be okay?" The question hit her like a punch to the stomach. She forced her face to stay calm. Kids could smell fear like dogs could smell bacon. "Of course we are," she said. "We always are, right?" He nodded, but she could see the worry in his eyes. Kids knew more than adults wanted to believe. Elena got ready quickly. Jeans that had seen better days, a white t-shirt that was soft from too many washes, sneakers with a hole in the left toe that she covered with tape. She grabbed her jacket and headed out into the gray Brooklyn morning. The streets were already busy. Cars honked. People hurried past with their heads down and phones pressed to their ears. The air smelled like rain and car exhaust and the coffee cart on the corner. Elena walked fast. She couldn't afford to be late. Not today. Mr. Rossi, the diner owner, had been giving her looks lately. The kind of looks that meant her job was hanging by a thread. Tony's diner sat on the corner like an old friend. Red leather booths that were cracked and patched. A counter with stools that squeaked when you spun them. The smell of bacon grease and coffee that had been brewing too long. Elena tied her apron around her waist and grabbed her order pad. The morning rush was about to begin. Office workers wanting coffee and eggs. Construction guys needing food that would stick to their ribs. regular customers who knew her name and always left good tips. She moved between the tables like a dancer, refilling coffee cups, taking orders, wiping down counters. Her feet hurt and her back ached, but she smiled at every customer. Tips paid for Nico's medicine. Around 10 in the morning, the rush died down. Elena was cleaning tables when she saw her through the window, a little girl, maybe 7 years old. She stood under the awning of the shop next door. Her dark hair was soaked from the rain. Her clothes were too big and hung on her tiny frame like wet curtains. But it was her eyes that made Elena stop moving. They were huge and dark and full of fear, the kind of fear that belonged on a battlefield, not in the face of a child. Elena watched the girl for a few minutes. She didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there getting wet and looking lost. Elena couldn't take it anymore. She set down her cleaning rag and walked outside. The rain hit her face like cold needles. "Hey, sweetheart," she said softly. She crouched down to the girl's level. "Are you okay?" The girl looked at her but didn't speak. Her lips were blue from the cold. She was shivering. "Are you hungry?" Elena asked. "I work at this diner. I could get you something warm to eat." Still no answer, but the girl didn't run away either. Elena held out her hand. "My name is Elena. What's yours?" The girl stared at Elena's hand for a long moment. Then, slowly, she reached out and took it. Her fingers were like ice. "Come on," Elena said. "Let's get you inside where it's warm." She led the girl into the diner. A few customers looked up but went back to their food. In this neighborhood, people minded their own business. Elena sat the girl in a corner booth where she could see the door. She brought her a cup of hot chocolate and a plate of scrambled eggs with toast. "Eat up," Elena said. "You don't have to talk if you don't want to. Just eat." The girl attacked the food like she hadn't eaten in days. Maybe she hadn't. Elena's heart broke a little more with each bite the child took. Mr. Rossi appeared beside the table. He was a short, round man with thick glasses and a permanent scowl. "What's this?" he asked, pointing at the girl. "She was outside in the rain," Elena said. "She's just a kid." "And who's paying for her food?" Elena felt her face get hot. "I am." "With what money? You still owe me for the plate you broke last week." The girl looked up from her eggs. Her eyes were wide and scared again. Elena wanted to protect her from everything bad in the world. "It's fine," Elena said. "I'll take care of it." Mr. Rossi shook his head and walked away, muttering about bleeding hearts and lost profits. Around 3 o'clock, Nico burst through the diner door. His backpack bounced on his shoulders. His cheeks were red from the cold. "Elena," he called out. Then he saw the girl in the corner booth and stopped. "Who's that?" "I don't know her name yet," Elena said. "She was outside in the rain. Come meet her." Nico walked over slowly. He was shy with strangers. "Hi," he said to the girl. "I'm Nico." The girl looked at him but didn't speak. Nico sat down across from her. "Are you okay?" he asked. "You look sad." Kids had a way of cutting right to the truth. The girl's eyes filled with tears, but she still didn't speak. "It's okay," Nico said. "Elena takes care of me, too. She's really good at it." Elena felt her throat get tight. Sometimes Nico said things that made her want to cry and smile at the same time. The afternoon passed quietly. The girl ate another meal. Nico did his homework at the table beside her. Elena worked, but kept one eye on both kids. Around 5 o'clock, 2 men walked past the diner window. They moved slowly, like they were looking for something. One was tall and thin. The other was shorter, but built like a boxer. They both wore dark suits, despite the rain. Elena felt something cold crawl up her spine. The girl saw them, too. She slid down in her seat and grabbed Elena's hand so tight it hurt. The men stopped. They looked through the window straight at their table. The girl made a small whimpering sound. It's okay, Elena whispered. I'm right here. She stepped in front of the girl. If these men wanted to hurt a child, they'd have to go through her first. Elena was small, but she was fierce when it came to protecting people she cared about. The men stared for another long moment, then they moved on. But the fear in the girl's eyes told Elena this wasn't over. As the evening wore on, Mr. Rossi got more and more angry. The girl had eaten 2 full meals, and Elena hadn't paid for any of it. When the dinner rush started, he pulled Elena aside. "This has to stop," he said. "This isn't a charity. I got bills to pay too." "I know," Elena said, "but she's just a little girl. She has nowhere to go." "Not my problem," Mr. Rossi said. "And if you can't afford to pay for her food, maybe you can't afford to work here either." Elena felt the world tilt under her feet. "What do you mean?" "I mean you're fired," he said. "Clean out your locker and get out." Elena's mouth opened and closed like a fish. "But I need this job. My brother should have thought about that before you started giving away free food." Elena wanted to argue, to beg, to explain that she'd been working at this diner for 2 years and never missed a day. But she could see it was no use. Mr. Rossi had made up his mind. She untied her apron with shaking hands. Her tips for the day were only $37, not even enough to buy Nico's medicine. "Come on, kids," she said quietly. "We have to go." Nico looked confused. The girl slipped her hand into Elena's like it belonged there. They walked home through the rain. Elena pulled her jacket over both kids' heads, trying to keep them dry. Her mind raced. How would she pay rent? How would she buy groceries? What if Nico had an asthma attack and she couldn't afford his medicine? "Elena?" Nico asked. "Are you okay?" She looked down at his worried face, at the scared little girl who trusted her enough to hold her hand. These kids needed her to be strong, to have answers, to not fall apart. "I'm fine," she lied. "Everything's going to be fine." But as they walked up the stairs to their tiny apartment, Elena saw a black car parked across the street. The windows were too dark to see inside, but she felt eyes watching them. The same cold feeling from the diner washed over her. She hurried the kids inside and locked the door. Then she checked the locks twice more. Elena tried calling the police about the girl, but they said they couldn't do anything unless she was reported missing. She tried the hospitals and social services, but no one had any record of a lost child matching her description. The girl sat on the couch next to Nico. She still hadn't spoken a word, but she ate the peanut butter sandwich Elena made her. She let Elena brush her hair. She even smiled a little when Nico showed her his comic books. As the night got later, Elena made a bed for the girl on the couch. She found one of her own t-shirts for the child to sleep in. It was way too big, but it was clean and warm. "I'll be right in the next room," Elena told her. "If you need anything, just call for me, okay?" The girl nodded. Her first real response all day. Elena tucked Nico into his bed. He was wheezing a little again. "Is she going to stay with us?" he asked. "I don't know," Elena said honestly. "Probably just for tonight." "I hope she stays," Nico said. "She looks lonely." Elena kissed his forehead and turned off the light. But before she could leave the room, a loud pounding on the front door made them both freeze. Bang, bang, bang. "Open the door," a deep voice called out. It wasn't asking. It was demanding. Elena's heart started racing. The girl appeared in Nico's doorway, trembling. "Stay here," Elena whispered. "Both of you. Don't make a sound." She crept to the front door and looked through the peephole. A tall man stood in the hallway. He wore an expensive suit that probably cost more than Elena made in 3 months. His face was hard and cold, like it was carved from stone. "I know you're in there," the man said. His voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of someone used to being obeyed. "I need to speak with the girl." Elena pressed her back against the door. Her whole body was shaking. "There's no girl here," she called out. "Don't lie to me," the man said. "I saw her through the diner window. I know she's with you." "I don't know what you're talking about." There was a long pause. Elena could hear her own heartbeat in her ears. "My name is Matteo Romano," the man said. "The child you're protecting, she belongs to my family." Elena didn't answer. Every instinct told her not to trust this man, not to open the door, not to let him anywhere near the frightened little girl who had already been through too much. "You're not safe here," Matteo said finally. His voice was softer now, but somehow that made it scarier. "None of you are. The men who were watching you today, they're not going to give up." Elena's blood turned to ice. So she hadn't imagined the men at the diner. They had been real, and they had been watching. "What do you want?" she whispered through the door. "To keep her safe," Matteo said. "To keep all of you safe. But you have to trust me." "I don't trust anyone," Elena said. She heard footsteps moving away from the door. Then everything went quiet. Elena waited 10 minutes before she dared to look through the peephole again. The hallway was empty, but somehow that didn't make her feel any better. She went back to check on the kids. Nico was asleep, but the girl was sitting up on the couch, staring at the door. "Do you know that man?" Elena asked quietly. The girl nodded. Is he a good man or a bad man?" The girl thought for a long moment. Then she shrugged. Like the answer wasn't that simple. Elena made herself a cup of tea and sat by the window. The black car was still across the street, waiting, watching. She thought about Matteo Romano's words. "You're not safe here." Elena had spent her whole life trying to stay safe, trying to keep Nico safe, working hard, following the rules, minding her own business. But somehow, by helping one scared little girl, she had stepped into a world she didn't understand. A world where strange men in expensive suits showed up at your door in the middle of the night. Where children were too afraid to speak. Elena sipped her tea and watched the street. Tomorrow she would figure out what to do. Tomorrow she would find a way to keep her small family safe. But tonight she would keep watch. Tonight she would be the shield between the dangerous world outside and the 2 innocent children sleeping in her apartment. The rain kept falling. The car kept waiting. And Elena Caruso sat by her window, holding a baseball bat in her lap, ready to fight for the only things in the world that mattered to her. She had no idea that her life had just changed forever, that the frightened little girl sleeping on her couch would bring both love and danger into her world. She had no idea that the man in the expensive suit would become the most important person in her life. All she knew was that some things were worth fighting for. Some things were worth the risk. And as she watched over the children she loved, Elena felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Elena woke up with her cheek pressed against the cold window. Sunlight streamed through the glass, making her squint. Her neck was stiff from sleeping in the chair all night. The baseball bat had fallen to the floor beside her feet. She looked across the street. The black car was gone. Elena rubbed her eyes and checked the time on her phone. 7 in the morning. She had slept for maybe 3 hours. Her body felt like she had been hit by a truck, but her mind was sharp, alert. She tiptoed to check on the kids. Nico was still sleeping, his breathing steady and quiet. The girl was awake on the couch, watching Elena with those big, dark eyes. "Morning, sweetheart," Elena whispered. "Did you sleep okay?" The girl nodded. She sat up and smoothed down the t-shirt that was still too big for her tiny frame. Elena made breakfast quietly. Scrambled eggs, toast with strawberry jam, orange juice from the carton that was almost empty. She would need to go grocery shopping today. But first, she needed to figure out what to do about the girl, and she needed to find another job. Fast. Nico woke up just as Elena was setting the plates on the table. He smiled when he saw the girl was still there. "Good morning," he said to her. "I'm glad you stayed." The girl smiled back. It was small, but it was real. They ate breakfast in comfortable silence. Elena kept glancing at the window, watching for the black car, for men in expensive suits, for any sign of danger. After breakfast, Nico got ready for school. Elena helped him pack his backpack and made sure he had his inhaler. "Will she be here when I get home?" Nico asked, looking at the girl. "I don't know," Elena said honestly. "But I promise I'll keep her safe until we figure things out." Nico hugged Elena tight. Then he surprised everyone by hugging the girl too. She stiffened for a moment, then relaxed into his arms. After Nico left for school, Elena tried to talk to the girl again. She sat next to her on the couch and spoke softly. "Can you tell me your name?" she asked. The girl shook her head. "Can you tell me where you live? Where your family is?" Another head shake. "Are you scared of that man who came to the door last night?" The girl thought about this for a long moment. Then she made a gesture with her hands. A little scared, but not too scared. Elena felt like she was trying to solve a puzzle with half the pieces missing. This child had clearly been through something terrible. But what? And how could Elena help if she didn't know what was wrong? Around 10 in the morning, Elena found an envelope that had been slipped under her door. It was thick and heavy. Her name was written on the outside in neat handwriting. Inside was more money than Elena had ever seen in one place. $100 bills, crisp and new. There had to be at least $3,000. There was also a cell phone, brand new, still in the box, and a note written in the same neat handwriting. "For the children's needs, you can reach me at the number programmed into the phone. MR." Elena stared at the money. Part of her wanted to throw it back outside and pretend she had never seen it. She didn't take charity. She took care of herself and Nico. But another part of her thought about Nico's medicine, about the rent that was due next week, about the electricity bill that was already past due. The girl was watching her carefully. She seemed to understand what Elena was thinking about. "I can't take this," Elena said out loud. "I don't even know who he really is." But she didn't throw the money away either. She set it on the kitchen counter and tried not to look at it. Around noon, Elena decided to take the girl to the park. Maybe being outside would help her feel safe enough to talk. Maybe the fresh air would clear Elena's head and help her figure out what to do. They walked to the small playground 3 blocks away. It had swings and a slide and a few benches where parents could sit and watch their kids play. The girl seemed more relaxed outside. She sat on a swing and let Elena push her gently back and forth. She even laughed once when Elena pushed her a little too high. "You have a beautiful laugh," Elena said. "I hope I get to hear it again." They were having a good time until Elena noticed the men. 2 different men this time, but they had the same look as the ones from yesterday. Dark clothes, serious faces, eyes that saw everything. They stood near the entrance to the park, trying to look casual. But Elena had spent her whole life watching for danger. She knew what it looked like. The girl saw them too. She jumped off the swing and grabbed Elena's hand. Her whole body was shaking. "It's okay," Elena said, but her own voice was shaky too. "We'll just go home." But when they started walking toward the exit, the men moved to block their path. Elena's heart started pounding. She looked around for help, but the park was mostly empty. The girl was breathing fast, almost hyperventilating. Elena knelt down and held the child's face in her hands. "Look at me," she said softly. "Just look at me. We're going to be okay." But the girl was too scared to hear her. She was lost in whatever nightmare was playing in her head. Elena did the only thing she could think of. She started to sing. It was a lullaby her own mother had sung to her when she was little. A soft, gentle melody in Italian that her grandmother had taught her mother, who had taught it to Elena. "Dormi, dormi, bel bambino," Elena sang quietly. "Sleep, sleep, beautiful child." The effect was immediate. The girl stopped shaking. Her breathing slowed down. She looked at Elena with wonder, like she couldn't believe what she was hearing. Elena kept singing, holding the girl's hands and looking into her eyes. The melody was sweet and old and full of love. She was so focused on calming the girl that she didn't notice the third man until he was standing right behind her. Elena spun around, ready to fight if she had to. But this man was different from the others. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair and eyes that seemed to see straight through her. This was Matteo Romano. Elena knew it without being told. "Who taught you that song?" he asked quietly. His voice sent shivers down Elena's spine, not because it was threatening, but because it was full of pain. Old pain that had been buried deep but never healed. "My mother," Elena said, instinctively moving to shield the girl with her body. "And her mother before that." Matteo stared at her for a long moment. Elena could see something breaking apart behind his eyes. "Do you know what that song means?" he asked. "It's just a lullaby," Elena said. "Something to help scared children feel safe." The girl tugged on Elena's sleeve. When Elena looked down, the child was pointing at herself and then at Matteo. "You know him," Elena said. It wasn't a question. The girl nodded. Then she did something that shocked everyone. She let go of Elena's hand and walked over to Matteo. He knelt down to her level, his hard face softening. "Ciao, piccola," he said gently. "Hello, little one." The girl touched his cheek with her small hand. Matteo closed his eyes like her touch was the most precious thing in the world. "I've been looking for you," he said to her. "I was so worried." Elena felt like she was watching something private, something sacred, but she was also confused and still scared. "Who is she?" Elena asked. Matteo looked up at her. "Her name is Leah. She's my niece." "Your niece? But why was she alone? Why is she so scared?" Matteo's face got hard again. "Because there are people who want to hurt her, people who want to hurt anyone I care about." As if to prove his point, the two men from earlier started walking toward them. But before they could get close, 3 other men appeared seemingly out of nowhere. These men moved differently. They were faster, more dangerous. The first 2 men saw them coming and ran. "My men," Matteo explained to Elena. "They've been watching the park, keeping you safe." "Keeping us safe from what?" Elena demanded. Matteo stood up, still holding Leah's hand. "From people who would use her to get to me. From people who don't care if innocent children get hurt." Elena felt sick to her stomach. What kind of life is that for a little girl? "Not the life I wanted for her," Matteo said quietly, "but the life we have." Leah tugged on Matteo's sleeve and pointed at Elena. Then she did something that made Elena's heart skip a beat. She spoke. It was just one word, soft and small and barely audible, but it was the most beautiful sound Elena had ever heard. "Mama?" Elena's eyes filled with tears. This scared, hurt little girl was asking if Elena could be her mother. It was the most heartbreaking and wonderful thing Elena had ever experienced. Matteo looked shocked too. "She hasn't spoken in months," he said. "Not since—" He stopped talking, but Elena could fill in the blanks. Not since whatever terrible thing had happened to make a 7-year-old girl too scared to speak. "Since what?" Elena asked gently. Matteo's jaw tightened. "Since her parents were killed." Elena felt the world tilt. This little girl was an orphan. just like Elena and Nico had been, just like so many children who had to grow up too fast and learn that the world wasn't always safe. "I need to get you both somewhere secure," Matteo said. "The men who were here today, they won't give up." "I'm not going anywhere with you," Elena said. But her voice wasn't as strong as her words. She was starting to understand that she might not have a choice. "Then they'll keep coming," Matteo said. "And next time, my men might not get here in time." Elena looked down at Leah. The little girl was holding both their hands now, looking back and forth between them like she was trying to figure out if they were going to take care of her. "What do you want from me?" Elena asked Matteo. "Nothing," he said. "You've already given me more than I could have asked for." "What do you mean?" "You made her feel safe enough to speak again," Matteo said. His voice was rough with emotion. "Do you have any idea what that means to me?" Elena was starting to understand that this was about more than just keeping a little girl safe. This was about family, about love, about people who had lost everything and were trying to find their way back to something that mattered. But she was also thinking about Nico, about her little brother who needed her, who depended on her for everything. "I have to get home," she said. "My brother will be back from school soon." "I'll drive you," Matteo said. "I can walk." "Not anymore," Matteo said. His voice was gentle but firm. "From now on, nowhere is safe for you unless I make it safe." Elena wanted to argue. She had been taking care of herself and Nico for years. She didn't need some stranger telling her what was safe and what wasn't. But then she looked at Leah, at this tiny girl who had been through hell and was finally starting to trust again. Elena couldn't walk away from her. She couldn't abandon a child who had already been abandoned by too many people. "Okay," she said finally, "but just a ride home. That's all." Matteo's car was nothing like Elena had expected. It was big and black and looked like it could stop bullets. When he opened the door for her, Elena saw that the windows were tinted so dark she couldn't see through them. Leah climbed into the back seat and patted the spot next to her. Elena sat down and immediately felt like she was in a different world. The seats were leather. The car was quiet. Everything smelled expensive. "Are you in the Mafia?" Elena asked as Matteo started driving. She expected him to lie, to make up some story about being in business or imports or something normal. Instead, he looked at her in the rearview mirror and said, "Yes." Elena's mouth fell open. She had suspected, but hearing him say it out loud was different. "Are you going to hurt us?" she asked. "Never," Matteo said without hesitation. "I would die before I let anyone hurt you or Leah or your brother." Something in his voice made Elena believe him, which was crazy. She was sitting in a car with a man who had just admitted to being in the Mafia. She should be terrified, but instead she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: protected. When they got to Elena's apartment building, Nico was sitting on the front steps. He had his backpack beside him and his inhaler in his hand. When he saw the fancy car, his eyes got wide. "Elena!" he called out, running over to them. Elena got out of the car quickly. She hugged Nico tight, checking to make sure he was breathing okay. "Who's that?" Nico asked, pointing at Matteo. "His name is Mr. Romano," Elena said. "He's a friend." Matteo got out of the car and walked over to them. Nico looked up at him with curiosity instead of fear. Kids were good at reading people. "You must be Nico," Matteo said, crouching down to the boy's level. "Elena told me about you." "She did?" Nico looked pleased. "Are you rich? That's a really nice car." Matteo smiled. It was the first real smile Elena had seen from him. "I do okay." "Cool," Nico said. Then he saw Leah getting out of the car and his face lit up. "You're back." He ran over to her and took her hand. I was worried you were gone. Elena was worried too, even though she tried to pretend she wasn't. Leah smiled at him. A real, genuine smile that made her whole face change. Elena felt tears prick her eyes again. These two kids had known each other for less than a day, but they had already formed a bond. Like they recognized something in each other. Something that said they both knew what it was like to be scared and small and need someone bigger to take care of them. "We should go upstairs," Elena said. "All of us?" Nico asked hopefully. Elena looked at Matteo. She didn't want to invite him into her home. Her tiny, shabby apartment with its secondhand furniture and leaky faucet. But Leah was still holding his hand, and Elena could see that being separated from him again would hurt her. "For a few minutes," Elena said finally. Matteo followed them up the narrow stairs to the third floor. Elena was embarrassed by how small and poor her apartment looked, but when Matteo walked in, he didn't look around with judgment. He looked around like he was memorizing every detail, like he was trying to understand who she was by seeing where she lived. Nico immediately started showing Leah his comic books again. They sat on the couch together, their heads bent over the colorful pages. Elena went to the kitchen to make coffee. Her hands were shaking as she measured the grounds. She was still processing everything that had happened. The money under her door, the men in the park, Leah speaking for the first time in months, and Matteo Romano, who had turned her quiet, careful life completely upside down in less than 24 hours. "Your home is beautiful," Matteo said from behind her. Elena turned around. He was standing in the doorway, looking at her with an expression she couldn't read. "It's small," she said. "It's full of love." Matteo corrected. "That makes it beautiful." Elena felt her cheeks get warm. "Why are you really here?" she asked. "Because Leah needs you," Matteo said simply, "and because you need protection that I can provide. I've been taking care of myself and Nico just fine." "I know," Matteo said, "but now you're part of something bigger. Whether you wanted to be or not." Elena poured 2 cups of coffee and handed him one. "What does that mean?" "It means the people who killed Leah's parents know that she spoke to you. They know you made her feel safe. And they'll use that against both of us if they can." Elena felt cold all over. "What do you want me to do?" "Trust me," Matteo said. "Let me keep you safe." "And what do you get out of it?" Matteo looked at Leah and Nico on the couch. Leah was laughing at something in one of the comic books. It was the most normal, childlike sound Elena had heard from her. "I get to see her smile," Matteo said quietly. "I get to hear her laugh. For the first time in months, I get to see her act like a little girl instead of a victim." Elena understood then. This wasn't about power or control or owing favors. This was about a man who had lost everything and found a tiny piece of hope in the form of a scared little girl who trusted Elena enough to speak again. "I need to think about it," Elena said. "Don't think too long," Matteo said. "The longer you wait, the more dangerous it gets." He set down his coffee cup and walked over to the couch. "Leah," he said gently, "we have to go now." Leah's face fell. She looked at Elena with pleading eyes. "Can she stay for dinner?" Nico asked. "Please? I want to show her my puzzle." Elena looked at Matteo. "Is it safe for her to stay a little longer?" "As long as my men are watching the building," he said. "Yes. Then she can stay." Relief washed over Leah's face. She hugged Elena tight, whispering something in her ear that Elena couldn't quite hear. Matteo headed for the door. "I'll be back in 2 hours," he said. "Wait," Elena called out. She walked over to him and lowered her voice. "That money you left, I can't take it." "It's not charity," Matteo said. "It's payment." "For what?" "For giving me back something I thought I'd lost forever." Before Elena could ask what he meant, He was gone. Elena stood at her window and watched him get into his car. She could see other cars parked on the street now. His men, keeping watch. For the first time in her adult life, Elena Caruso was not completely responsible for keeping her family safe. Someone else was watching out for them, too. She didn't know if that should make her feel better or more terrified. But as she watched Nico and Leah work on a puzzle together at the kitchen table, she realized it didn't matter what she felt. What mattered was that two children were happy and safe and laughing in her tiny apartment. Everything else was just details. The next few days passed in a strange blur. Elena felt like she was living in two different worlds at the same time. In one world, she was still Elena Caruso, a woman who clipped coupons and worried about paying rent, who made peanut butter sandwiches for lunch because meat was too expensive, who counted every penny and hoped her old car would start one more time. In the other world, she was someone who mattered to a man with enough power to have people watching her building 24 hours a day, someone whose phone calls were answered immediately, someone who could walk down the street and feel invisible eyes keeping her safe. It was unsettling, but it was also the first time in years that Elena had slept through the night without waking up worried about something terrible happening. Leah had started staying with them more often. Matteo would drop her off in the morning and pick her up at night. Elena told herself it was temporary, that once the danger passed, things would go back to normal. But watching Leah and Nico together made her hope that normal was overrated. They fit together like pieces of the same puzzle. Nico was patient with Leah's silence. Leah was gentle with Nico's breathing problems. They shared food without being asked. They held hands when they crossed the street. They looked out for each other the way siblings should. Elena had started job hunting, but it was harder than she expected. Word had gotten around that she had been fired from Tony's diner for giving away free food. In a neighborhood where everyone knew everyone, that kind of reputation made employers nervous. She was coming back from another failed interview when she noticed the man following her. He stayed about half a block behind. When she stopped to look in a store window, he stopped too. When she crossed the street, he crossed 30 seconds later. Elena's heart started pounding. She thought about the phone Matteo had given her, the one with his number programmed in. But she didn't want to be the kind of person who called for help every time she got scared. She decided to test whether she was being paranoid. She walked into a corner store and bought a pack of gum she didn't want. When she came out, the man was still there. Elena walked faster. So did he. She turned a corner. He turned too. By the time Elena got to her building, she was almost running. She fumbled with her keys, looking over her shoulder. The man had stopped at the corner, but she could feel him watching. Elena ran up the stairs 2 at a time. When she got to her apartment, she locked the door and immediately called Mrs. Chen next door. "Are the kids okay?" Elena asked without saying hello. "They're fine," Mrs. Chen said, sounding confused. "They're doing homework at my kitchen table. Why?" "Just keep them there for a few minutes, okay? I'll be right over." Elena hung up and called the number Matteo had given her. He answered on the first ring. "What's wrong?" he asked immediately. "Someone was following me," Elena said. "A man in a brown jacket. He followed me for 6 blocks. "Where are you now?" "Home. The kids are next door." "Stay there. Don't open the door for anyone. I'm on my way." Matteo hung up. Elena sat on her couch and stared at the door. Every sound from the hallway made her jump. Footsteps, voices, the elevator creaking. 15 minutes later, there was a soft knock. Elena looked through the peephole and saw Matteo. She opened the door quickly. "Are you hurt?" he asked, stepping inside and looking her over carefully. "No, just scared." Matteo nodded. "My men lost him 2 blocks away." He knew he was being watched. "So it was real?" I wasn't imagining it? You weren't imagining it. Matteo's voice was grim. They're getting bolder, testing our defenses. Elena sat down hard on her couch. I can't live like this, looking over my shoulder every time I leave the house, being afraid to go grocery shopping. I know, Matteo said. He sat down beside her, careful to leave space between them. That's why I think it's time to consider other options. What kind of options? My house is secure, gated, protected. You and Nico and Leah would be safe there. Elena shook her head immediately. I can't just move in with you. I barely know you. You know I would never hurt you, Matteo said. You know I would die before I let anyone hurt Leah. You know that when you sing to her, she smiles for the first time all day. Elena did know those things. But she also knew that accepting Matteo's protection would change everything. It would make her dependent on a man she was already starting to care about too much. It would put her and Nico in a world they didn't belong in. There has to be another way, she said. Maybe, Matteo agreed. But are you willing to bet Nico's life on it? Are you willing to bet Leah's? Before Elena could answer, she heard rapid footsteps in the hallway. Then Mrs. Chen's voice, high and frightened. Elena! Elena, you need to come quickly! Elena ran to the door and opened it. Mrs. Chen was standing there in her house slippers, wringing her hands. It's Nico, she said. He's having trouble breathing. I gave him his inhaler, but it's not working. Elena's blood turned to ice. She pushed past Mrs. Chen and ran to the next apartment. Nico was sitting at the kitchen table, his face pale and his lips slightly blue. He was making a wheezing sound with every breath. Hey, buddy, Elena said, trying to keep her voice calm. Let's try the inhaler again, okay? But even as she helped him with the medicine, Elena could tell this was worse than usual. This was the kind of asthma attack that sent kids to the hospital. We need to call an ambulance, she said. No, Matteo said from behind her. My car is faster, and my driver knows every shortcut to the hospital. Elena wanted to argue. She wanted to handle this herself, the way she always had. But looking at Nico's scared face, she realized this wasn't about her pride. This was about getting her brother the help he needed as fast as possible. Okay, she said. Matteo scooped Nico up like he weighed nothing. It's going to be okay, he told the boy. We're going to get you fixed up. Leah appeared in the doorway, her eyes wide with fear. Elena grabbed her hand and they all rushed downstairs. Matteo's car was waiting outside with the engine running. His driver jumped out and opened all the doors. Elena climbed in the back seat with Nico while Matteo sat up front, talking rapidly into his phone. Dr. Martinez will meet us in the emergency room, he told Elena. She's the best pediatric specialist in the city. How do you know a pediatric specialist? Elena asked. Matteo's face went dark. I had a daughter once. Elena felt her heart clench. She wanted to ask more, but Nico chose that moment to grab her hand. I can't breathe good, he whispered. I know, baby, Elena said, smoothing his hair. We're almost there. Just hold on. The hospital was a blur of bright lights and running footsteps. Dr. Martinez was waiting for them, just like Matteo had promised. She was a small woman with kind eyes and gentle hands. Let's get you feeling better, she said to Nico as nurses wheeled him away on a gurney. Elena started to follow, but a hand on her shoulder stopped her. Family only, the nurse said. I am family, Elena said fiercely. I'm his sister. I'm all he has. The nurse looked at Elena's young face and seemed to understand. Okay, but the other people will have to wait out here. Elena looked back at Matteo and Leah. Leah was crying silently, tears streaming down her face. Take care of her, Elena said to Matteo. Please. Of course, he said. Take care of your brother. Don't worry about anything else. The next few hours were the longest of Elena's life. She sat beside Nico's hospital bed while machines monitored his breathing and IV tubes delivered medicine to help his lungs relax. Dr. Martinez explained that Nico had developed a severe respiratory infection. His asthma made it harder for his body to fight it off. "Has he been under any unusual stress lately?" she asked Elena. "Sometimes emotional trauma can trigger attacks like this." Elena thought about the past few days, the men following them, the constant feeling of being watched, the fear that had become a part of their daily life. "Maybe," she said quietly. "Well, he's going to be fine," Dr. Martinez assured her, "but he'll need to stay here for a day or two while we get the infection under control." Elena nodded. She would stay with him every minute. She would sleep in the uncomfortable hospital chair and eat vending machine food and not leave his side until he was completely better. Around midnight, there was a soft knock on the door. Elena looked up to see Matteo standing in the doorway with 2 cups of coffee and a bag from a nearby restaurant. "How is he?" Matteo asked quietly. "Better. The medicine is working." Elena accepted the coffee gratefully. "Where's Leah?" "Sleeping in my car. Luca is watching her." "Who's Luca?" "My business partner and my friend. One of the few people I trust completely." Elena nodded. She was too tired to ask more questions. "You need to eat," Matteo said, setting the food on the bedside table. "I'm not hungry." "When was the last time you had a real meal?" Elena tried to remember. Yesterday? The day before? Time had become fuzzy. "You can't take care of him if you don't take care of yourself," Matteo said gently. Elena knew he was right. She unwrapped a sandwich and took a bite. It tasted better than anything she had eaten in weeks. "Thank you," she said, "for the doctor, for getting us here so fast, for—" she gestured helplessly. "Everything." "You don't need to thank me," Matteo said. "This is what family does for each other." "We're not family." Matteo looked at Nico sleeping peacefully in the hospital bed. Then he looked at Elena, exhausted and worried, but still keeping watch over her little brother. "Aren't we?" he asked quietly. Elena felt something shift inside her chest, something that had been locked up tight for a very long time. She had spent so many years believing that family was just her and Nico against the world. That love was something you had to earn through sacrifice and hard work. But maybe family was bigger than that. Maybe it could include a scared little girl who needed someone to sing her to sleep. Maybe it could include a man who had lost everything and was trying to build something new from the pieces that were left. "Elena," Matteo said softly, "I need to tell you something." She looked at him. There was something in his voice that made her nervous. "The men who have been watching you, they work for someone named Don Vitale. He's—" Matteo paused. "He's a rival, someone who wants to hurt me by hurting the people I care about. And he thinks you care about us?" "I do care about you," Matteo said simply, "all of you. More than I should, more than is safe." Elena felt her heart start pounding for a different reason now. What does that mean? "It means as long as you're in that apartment, you'll never be completely safe. It means every time you leave the house, you'll be a target. It means Nico will keep getting sick from the stress, and Leah will keep having nightmares about losing another family." Elena stared at him. "You're asking me to choose." "I'm asking you to let me protect you, really protect you, not just watch from a distance and hope for the best." Elena looked at Nico's sleeping face. He looked so young and peaceful with the oxygen mask covering his nose and mouth. So vulnerable. "If I say yes," she said slowly, "if we come to live with you, what happens then? Do we just hide in your house forever?" "No," Matteo said. "We figure out how to build a life together. A safe life. A life where kids can go to school and play in the park without looking over their shoulders. And what about us? Elena asked. What happens between us? Matteo was quiet for a long moment. I don't know, he said honestly, but I'd like to find out. Elena felt tears prick her eyes. She had been alone for so long, strong for so long, responsible for so long. The idea of sharing that burden with someone else was both terrifying and wonderful. I need time to think, she said. I understand, but don't think too long. Every day we wait is another day they have to plan something worse. Matteo stood up to leave. At the door, he turned back. Elena? Yeah? Whatever you decide, I want you to know something. These past few days, watching you with Leah and Nico, it's the first time in 2 years that I've remembered what it feels like to have hope. After he left, Elena sat in the dark hospital room and listened to the steady beep of machines monitoring her brother's recovery. She thought about hope, about family, about the difference between surviving and living. Outside the window, she could see one of Matteo's cars parked in the hospital lot, watching, protecting, waiting. For the first time since her parents died, Elena Caruso wasn't alone in the world. The question was, what was she brave enough to do about it? As if he could sense her thoughts, Nico stirred in his sleep. Elena, he whispered, I'm here, buddy. What do you need? Is Leah okay? Even sick and scared, Nico was worried about someone else. Elena's heart swelled with love and pride. She's fine. She's safe. Good, Nico said. Then, so quietly, Elena almost missed it. I like our new family. Elena held his hand until he fell back asleep, but his words echoed in her mind for hours. Our new family? Maybe it was time to stop running from the idea of letting other people help carry the load. Maybe it was time to admit that some risks were worth taking. Maybe it was time to choose love over fear. But first, she needed to get her brother well. Everything else could wait until he was home and safe and breathing easy again. Elena settled back in her chair and closed her eyes. Tomorrow would bring new decisions and new challenges. Tonight, she would just be grateful that the people she loved were alive and protected, even if she didn't fully understand how or why. Sometimes, that was enough. 3 days later, Nico was finally ready to come home from the hospital. His breathing was back to normal, and the infection was completely gone. But Elena could see something different in his eyes, a wariness that hadn't been there before. The attack had scared him more than he wanted to admit. Elena packed his few belongings while he sat on the hospital bed, swinging his legs nervously. Are we going back to our apartment? He asked. Elena had been dreading this question. She had spent 3 nights sleeping in an uncomfortable hospital chair, thinking about Matteo's offer, about safety versus independence, about what was best for Nico and what was best for her pride. I don't know yet, she said honestly. I think we should go stay with Mr. Romano, Nico said quietly. His house is probably safer, and Leah is there. Elena stopped packing and looked at her little brother. Is that what you want? Nico nodded. I like him. He's not scary like I thought he would be. And when I couldn't breathe, he carried me really carefully, like I was something precious. Elena felt her throat get tight. Nico had never had a man in his life who treated him like he was precious. Their father had died when Nico was just a baby. There had been no grandfathers or uncles or family friends to fill that role. Are you sure? Elena asked. I'm sure, Nico said. Besides, if we stay at our apartment, you'll just worry all the time. And when you worry, I worry. And when I worry, my chest gets tight. Elena realized that her 8-year-old brother was wiser than she was. He understood that their old life wasn't working anymore. that sometimes you had to make hard choices to keep the people you loved safe. Okay, Elena said, we'll try it. But if you change your mind, or if you don't feel comfortable there, we'll figure out something else. Nico smiled. It was the first real smile she had seen from him since his attack. I won't change my mind. Dr. Martinez came in to do one final check on Nico's breathing. Everything sounded good. She gave Elena a prescription for a stronger inhaler and instructions to bring him back if he had any problems. Has he been under less stress lately? She asked Elena. Elena thought about the past 3 days. Even in the hospital, with all the worry about Nico's health, she had slept better than she had in weeks, knowing that Matteo's people were watching the building, knowing that someone else was sharing the responsibility of keeping her family safe. Yes, she said, I think he has. When they walked out of the hospital, Matteo was waiting by his car. Leah was with him, holding his hand and bouncing on her toes with excitement. Nico, she called out. It was the second word Elena had heard her speak, and it sounded like music. Nico ran over to her, and they hugged like they hadn't seen each other in months instead of days. How are you feeling? Matteo asked Nico. Much better. The doctor said my lungs sound perfect now. I'm glad, Matteo said. He looked at Elena. Have you made a decision? Elena took a deep breath. We'd like to stay with you, if the offer is still open. Relief washed over Matteo's face. Of course it is. But I have conditions, Elena said quickly. Name them. I pay my own way. I contribute to groceries and household expenses. I'm not a charity case. Matteo nodded seriously. Agreed. Though I should mention that my housekeeper has been asking for help with meal preparation. If you're interested, it could be a job as well as a contribution. Elena felt a weight lift off her shoulders. A job, something useful to do, a way to maintain her dignity while accepting help. I'm interested, she said. Good. And your other conditions? If I ever feel like Nico is in more danger because of your business, we leave. No arguments. That's fair. And I want to understand what we're getting into. No secrets, no surprises. If someone is threatening us, I want to know who and why. Matteo hesitated. Some things in my world are better left unknown. Not when they affect my family, Elena said firmly. After a moment, Matteo nodded. All right. No secrets. They drove through Brooklyn toward a part of the city Elena had never seen before. The buildings got nicer, the streets got quieter, the cars got more expensive. Matteo's house wasn't what Elena had expected. She had pictured something gaudy and intimidating. Instead, it was elegant and understated. A beautiful stone mansion surrounded by high walls and mature trees. It looked like a home, not a fortress. Though Elena noticed the security cameras and the men posted discreetly around the property, inside the house was warm and welcoming. Hardwood floors, comfortable furniture, family photos on the mantelpieces. It felt lived in and loved. This is beautiful, Elena said, looking around the entryway. My wife decorated it, Matteo said quietly. I haven't changed much since... He didn't finish the sentence, but Elena understood. This house was full of memories, both beautiful and painful. A woman appeared from the kitchen. She was middle-aged with kind eyes and flour on her apron. This must be Elena and Nico, she said warmly. I'm Rosa, the housekeeper. I've been looking forward to meeting you. Rosa has been with my family for 15 years. Matteo said. She helps run the house and takes care of Leah when I'm working. Elena could tell there was more to Rosa's story, but she didn't ask. She had promised to accept no secrets, but she was learning that some information came with time and trust. Rosa showed them to their rooms. Nico and Leah would be sharing a space that had been converted into a wonderful children's bedroom with bunk beds and more toys than Elena had ever seen in one place. Elena's room was down the hall. It was bigger than her entire apartment had been, with a private bathroom and windows that looked out over a garden. "Is this really okay?" Elena asked Matteo as they stood in her doorway. "It's more than okay," he said. "It's necessary." That night, they had dinner together in the kitchen. Rosa had made pasta with homemade sauce and garlic bread. Nico and Leah chattered about their day and made plans for tomorrow. Elena watched Matteo during the meal. He was different here in his own home, more relaxed. He smiled when the kids laughed. He asked Nico about school and listened carefully to the answers. He cut Leah's food into small pieces and reminded her to use her napkin. He looked like a father. Elena wondered if he realized it. After dinner, Elena helped Rosa clean up while Matteo supervised bath time for the kids. She could hear him through the walls, making sure Nico used his inhaler and helping Leah wash her hair. "He's good with them," Rosa observed. "He is," Elena agreed. "Has he always wanted children?" Rosa's face grew sad. "He had a daughter, Isabella. She would be 9 now if—" "What happened?" Elena asked gently. "A car bomb," Rosa said quietly, "meant for him, but they were in the car. His wife, Maria, and little Isabella. They died instantly." Elena felt sick. She thought about the man who had carried Nico so carefully to the car when he couldn't breathe, who had driven like a maniac to get them to the hospital as fast as possible, who had made sure the best doctor was waiting for them. He had lost a child once. He would move heaven and earth to make sure it didn't happen again. "That's why he's so protective," Rosa continued, "and why having you and the children here means so much to him. He hasn't had a family in this house for 2 years." Later that evening, Elena found Matteo sitting on the back patio. He was smoking a cigarette and staring out at the garden. He looked tired and alone. "How are you settling in?" he asked when she joined him. "Good. Better than I expected." Elena sat down in the chair beside him. "Rosa told me about your wife and daughter." Matteo's hand tightened around his cigarette. "I'm sorry you had to hear that. I'm sorry you had to live it." They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Elena could hear Nico and Leah giggling in their room upstairs. The sound made her smile. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Anything. Why did hearing me sing that lullaby affect you so much?" Matteo took a long drag of his cigarette before answering. It was Maria's favorite song. She sang it to Isabella every night before bed. After they died, I thought I'd never hear it again. And then I sang it to Leah. And for a moment, it felt like they were still here. Like maybe there was still hope for something good in my life. Elena reached over and took his free hand. His fingers were calloused and strong, but they trembled slightly at her touch. "There is hope," she said softly. "I can see it in the way you look at Leah, in the way you took care of Nico at the hospital, in the way you've welcomed us into your home." Matteo looked at their joined hands. "I don't know how to do this," he admitted, "how to be part of a family again without being terrified that I'll lose it." "I don't know either," Elena said, "but maybe we can figure it out together." The next few weeks fell into a routine that surprised Elena with how natural it felt. She worked with Rosa in the kitchen, learning to cook meals for a household instead of just scraping by. Nico and Leah started attending the same private school, traveling back and forth in an armored car with a driver who doubled as security. Elena worried about them being in such a protected bubble, but both kids seemed to thrive with the stability and safety. Nico's asthma attacks became rare. Leah started speaking more and more, usually to Elena or Nico first, then gradually to Rosa, and even sometimes to Matteo. In the evenings, they would gather in the living room. Matteo would help Nico with his math homework, while Elena read stories to Leah. Sometimes they would watch movies together, all four of them piled on the big sectional couch. It felt like a real family. The kind Elena had always dreamed of, but never thought she could have. The only shadow over their happiness was the ever-present threat of Don Vitale. Matteo's security team reported regular attempts to probe their defenses. Cars driving slowly past the house, strangers asking questions in the neighborhood, phone calls with no one on the other end. Elena tried not to think about it during the day, but at night she would lie in her bed and listen for sounds that didn't belong. Footsteps in the garden, cars on the quiet street, anything that might mean their fragile peace was about to be shattered. One evening, about a month after they had moved in, Elena was tucking Leah into bed when the little girl grabbed her hand. "Elena," she said quietly. "Yes, sweetheart? Are you going to be my mama now?" Elena felt her heart stop. She looked down at Leah's earnest little face and saw so much hope there, so much trust. "I don't know," Elena said honestly. "Would you like that?" Leah nodded enthusiastically. "And Nico could be my brother, and Uncle Matteo could be our papa." "Uncle Matteo?" "That's what I call him, because he takes care of me like a papa, but he's not really my papa. My papa is in heaven with Mama." Elena felt tears sting her eyes. This little girl had already lost so much, but she was still brave enough to hope for more love in her life. "I think that sounds wonderful," Elena said, kissing Leah's forehead. "Sweet dreams, baby girl." Elena was walking down the hallway when she realized Matteo was standing in his doorway. He had heard the entire conversation. "Did you mean it?" he asked quietly. "Mean what?" "That it sounds wonderful, the idea of us being a family." Elena stopped walking. This was the conversation she had been avoiding for weeks, the one about what was happening between them, about whether the feelings growing in her heart were real or just gratitude for his protection. "I meant it," she said softly. Matteo stepped closer. "Elena, I need you to understand something. My world is dangerous. If you choose to be part of it, really part of it, there's no going back. There will always be people who want to hurt you to get to me. I know. And I need you to understand that I'm falling in love with you. Not just because you're beautiful, though you are. Not just because you're kind to Leah, though that means everything to me. I'm falling in love with the way you hum while you cook, the way you make sure Nico takes his medicine even when he doesn't want to. The way you've made this house feel like a home again." Elena felt her breath catch. "Matteo, I'm falling in love with your strength and your stubbornness and the way you're not afraid to argue with me when you think I'm wrong. I'm falling in love with the mother you are to Nico and the mother you could be to Leah." Elena reached up and touched his face. His skin was warm under her palm. "I'm falling in love with you too," she whispered, "and that terrifies me." "Why?" "Because I've spent so many years believing that love was a luxury I couldn't afford, that my job was just to survive and keep Nico safe. I don't know how to be someone who gets to be happy." Matteo leaned down until his forehead was touching hers. "Then let me show you," he said softly. "Let me show you that you deserve to be loved and protected and cherished. Let me show you what it feels like to be part of something bigger than just survival." Elena closed her eyes. She could hear Nico and Leah's gentle breathing from their room. She could smell Rosa's bread baking in the kitchen. She could feel the solid warmth of Matteo's body so close to hers. This was what home felt like. Not a place, but people. Not safety from the world, but safety with each other. "Yes," she whispered. Matteo kissed her then, soft and gentle and full of promise. Elena felt something inside her chest bloom like a flower that had been waiting years for sunlight. When they broke apart, Elena smiled. "So what happens now?" "Now we build something beautiful together," Matteo said. "All of us, one day at a time." From down the hall, they heard Leah call out, "Elena, can you sing the lullaby?" Elena looked at Matteo. "Together?" He nodded. They walked hand in hand to the children's room. Nico was already asleep, but Leah was sitting up in her bottom bunk, waiting. Elena sat on the edge of the bed while Matteo leaned against the doorframe. She began to sing the old Sicilian lullaby that had started this whole journey. "Dormi, dormi, bel bambino." Leah's eyes grew heavy. Nico smiled in his sleep, and Matteo watched his new family with wonder, as if he couldn't quite believe they were real. When the song was finished, Leah was asleep. Elena kissed both children goodnight and followed Matteo back to the hallway. "I love you," he said simply. "I love you too," Elena replied. And for the first time in her adult life, Elena Caruso went to sleep feeling completely, perfectly safe. Outside, Matteo's security team kept watch. Inside, a family that had been broken in different ways was learning how to heal together. The lullaby had brought them together. Love would keep them that way. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. There would always be people who wanted to hurt them. There would always be reasons to be afraid. But tonight there was just this. 2 children sleeping peacefully, a man who had learned to hope again, and a woman who had discovered that sometimes the most courageous thing you can do is let yourself be happy. In her dreams, Elena heard her mother's voice singing the old lullaby. And for the first time since her parents died, it didn't make her sad. It made her grateful. Because some songs are worth passing on. Some loves are worth the risk. And some families are worth fighting for, no matter what dangers lie ahead. Elena Caruso had found her home at last, and she was never letting it go.